Hello rugby fans and welcome to this week's rugby recap. Coming to you a little bit later than normal, but we are on it. Given the rugby championship was on its down week, we were hoping for a little bit of peace and quiet, but that's never the way in the world of rugby. In fact, the news cycle hit overdrive when the top line action was off. So here is a couple of big pieces of information from the week that was. Firstly was the bombshell news that All Blacks assistant coach Leon MacDonald would not be joining the squad in New Zealand and would be departing for good, citing a difference in philosophy with head coach Scott Robertson, which was a very strange piece of news given the pair's long-term relationship, the fact that they've worked together before, and also the fact that New Zealand rugby very rarely make these sort of decisions, which is mistakes, should we say, in hiring two coaches who weren't going to work well together. I guess it's like any other workplace. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time for differences to show, and this has certainly been the case between the two. But head coach Scott Robertson was clear to point out that this was not a personal issue between the two men, but just more a difference in philosophies on how the team should play, which you could kind of see coming through the cracks with them just scraping past England, albeit England are coming force and once again have some brilliant players. I mean, really the All Blacks were rather fortunate to scrape through without a loss there, and then that opening round loss in the Rugby Championship to Argentina in Wellington clearly knocked the socks off a few supporters and people from the outside. I don't know whether it was a case of Argentina being underestimated or the All Blacks just missing the pitch that day. But that was a very disappointing loss for the All Blacks. Great moment for Argentina, of course. And of course, the All Blacks very rarely lose twice, and they bounced back and thumped Argentina at Eden Park in emphatic fashion, as many would have expected, given that that was the 50th consecutive non-losing fixture for the All Blacks at Eden Park. We have to say that because there was a draw thrown in there, but quite a big record and a huge change for the All Blacks. Speaking today, Jason Ryan, the fellow All Black assistant coach, came out and said obviously the conversations were had and the decisions were made, but they moved on pretty quickly, to be fair, and that the players were focused on the massive challenge of facing the world champions in their own backyard in two tests, starting with Johannesburg this weekend and Cape Town the following weekend. All of these matches will be live and exclusive on FloRugby. I'm going to say that a few times throughout this video, so bear with me on that. That news we didn't think could be topped, but then as ever it was, with Felix Jones announcing that he would be leaving England with immediate effect. The RFU do have a 12-month notice on the assistant coach's contract, so it'll be interesting to see how they enforce that. But this piece of news was even juicier, given that Jones has really just been with the England setup for less than a year and had really turned around their defensive system, with England being very impressive towards the end of the Six Nations and obviously pushing the All Blacks to their limits in New Zealand this year. So Jones's departure is a major blow for Steve Borthwick and follows on from Aled Walters, the strength and conditioning coach, who's widely regarded as the best strength and conditioning coach in world rugby. His departure earlier this year, with that being one of the reasons reportedly for Jones departing, as well as what he claimed to be what is being claimed to be an unstable working environment within the English setup, which is very strange given Steve Borthwick comes across as a bit of a steady Eddie, if nothing else. So that's a major blow, seeing as that went. Jones had really made that English defence pretty ferocious, and you could see almost Springbok-like traits coming through, which is no surprise given Jones's allegiance to South Africa. The 37-year-old now is one of the hottest names on the coaching market, so it'll be really interesting to see where he ends up, with rumours circulating that he could be going back to the Boks or could be joining Walters with his native Ireland, which would be a huge boost for Andy Farrell's coaching ticket as they look to take the next step following an impressive July series and really an impressive run, bar that World Cup quarterfinal where they came up just short against the All Blacks, and also Twickenham with that late Marcus Smith drop goal, denying them a Grand Slam. But you can't really argue with two Six Nations titles on the bounce, a drawn series in South Africa, a series win over the All Blacks in New Zealand, and just generally being one of the top 2, 3, maybe even 4 teams in the world for the last 3 3-4 years. I mean, they've been phenomenal. So it'll be really interesting to see if Jones ends up back with that setup. That would be a heck of a coup. But whatever happens, McDonald and Jones on the coaching market is a huge boost for anyone in the coaching market. So let's see where those two end up. Now, with the Rugby Championship on a bye week, all eyes were on the Pacific Nations Cup, which is a hugely exciting and interesting competition. For anyone who's not been following it, it includes the main Pacific Island nations with Tonga, Fiji, Samoa, and then it's got Canada, Japan, and the US split across two pools. So the Pacific nations in one pool, and then you have Japan, Canada, and the US in the other pool. Starting with the Pacific nations, Fiji overcame a really slow start and an early deficit to turn over Samoa in a monstrous victory. In the end, it would be 42-16 to the Fijians in front of a brilliant, passionate crowd in Suva. So that was a great result for Fiji to get off the mark nice and early. On Sunday evening, very late European time, which is where I was watching it, at 10 p.m. kickoff in Vancouver, which would have obviously been around 3 p.m. for the local fans. It was a really interesting game. Japan came out super hot. They scored 2 tries inside the opening 6 minutes and had a monstrous lead at halftime. But the Canadians showed a heck of a lot of spirit, and not only spirit, which is sometimes kind of viewed as a negative in terms of, they were spirited, but they didn't really have much. This Canadian team have something going for them. They came back, they scored 4 tries to get 28 points. In the end, obviously, Japan would come out with a very big win, getting over the 50-point mark. But I think in the end, 55-28 was a fair reflection. But Canada, there was a lot to take from that match for them. In particular, the McMullen brothers coming on and scoring a try each, which is huge. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about the pair coming into the competition, and they have delivered on the hype, and they look like 2 bona fide stars. So it'll be really interesting to track where their careers go. They really look like they have the makings to make it in European rugby or perhaps Super Rugby, wherever they want to end up. The pair are very talented. So that's the McMullen brothers. For anyone not familiar with them, check them out. They are going to be big deals in the rugby world. Elsewhere, Japan looked great. They're really starting to settle in under Eddie Jones. Whether they're a threat for tier 1 nations yet remains to be seen. Fiji, on the basis of round 1, look to be just a tick ahead of them, so that'll be interesting if they meet in the knockout stages, how that goes. But that was a really exciting start to the Pacific Nations Cup. So recap: Fiji beat Samoa in round 1, Canada lost to Japan, so Japan and Fiji starting off with a win, but it was a really interesting opening round. Next up will be Canada will be facing the US, with the other side of the draw being Tonga against Samoa. So it'll be a really interesting round. Obviously, with the 2 winning sides getting a bye week ahead of the rest of the action. So really interesting that both teams get a home and away game, which is really great for the local fans, which has previously been a bit of an issue. But obviously, getting games in each of the nations is massive, and really exciting development for rugby on that side of the world. And certainly worth watching. You can watch it all live and free on Rugby Pass TV, which is brilliant. The World Rugby property are doing a great job with that streaming, so definitely check it out if you're looking for a bit of an extra rugby fix, and just to see what's going on that side. On the club front, the Currie Cup was back in action, and the Vodacom Bulls kept their lead atop the table ahead of the Golden Lions. So the Bulls overcame the Griquas with a very, in the end, dominant 47-24 win, which keeps them again up on top of the pool by 3 points, which is really interesting heading into the playoff rounds. A couple of rounds still to go, but they're looking home and dry for a playoff spot, and ultimately a home run if they can keep where they are. Nipping at their heels, the Lions came back to hold on to a nice 38-21 win over the Cheetahs, which ensures they stay in second, and it means the Cheetahs are in third. And just behind these 3 teams, you have the Airlink Pumas, who are really a Currie Cup force, and a really interesting team to watch. So certainly one for the neutrals if you're looking for a team to follow, as they're sitting in 4th and looking good for a playoff spot. They downed the Griffins, who are kind of the whipping boys of the Currie Cup at the moment, 45-26. Sticking in South Africa, the Springboks named their team for the first test against the All Blacks. Head coach Rassie Erasmus was forced into a few changes that perhaps he wouldn't have wanted to make, with Eben Etzebeth being the headline injury for this match. The veteran lock is out, and in comes Peter Steph Toy into the second row instead of the back row, where he did a job against Australia. So it'll be really interesting to see how the Boks go without Etzebeth, who gets through a ton of work and a lot of the time unseen work with just blowing up rocks. Obviously, Peter Steph Toy is more than capable of doing it, but he is, Du Toit is a tackling monster who really is best deployed in the 7 shirt, which would be the 6 shirt everywhere else. But he is in at lock, so it'll be interesting to see how much his role changes. For the Boks, on the positive front, Jasper Wiese is back from his ban and he'll make his first appearance of the season at number 8. His start means Elric Lowe drops to the bench, which will be interesting to see where Lowe comes on, because it kind of feels like he will cover the second row and back row with Etzebeth out. That'll be really interesting to see where that goes. In the back row, Kolisi comes back to captain the team once again at 6. So the captain is right back in, having been rested for the second test in Perth and spending time with Dricus du Plessis at the UFC. And on the bench, you have Marco van Staden, Lowe, as we've already mentioned, and Quagga Smith as the sort of back row, second row cover. So that'll be interesting to see how the Boks go with the 6-2 split again. In halfbacks, Kubas Reinach and Sasha Feinberg and Gamazulu get another shot at partnership, which has been really probably the biggest takeaway for the Boks this year, has just been how good Feinberg and Gamazulu is. I mean, the kid is the next big thing, if not already the big thing at fly half in world rugby, not just South African rugby, and is the perfect conductor for Tony Brown's attacking game. So he looks firmly ahead of Andre Pollard in the pecking order with Manny Lebok. You'd have to say at this moment in time a distant third, and especially given his goal-kicking woes, it's unlikely to see him displace either man. But it'll be really interesting to see how they deploy that with the 6-2, with looking at Pollard probably covering fly half and 12, and then you have Grant Williams covering scrum half and probably the back 3 in different configurations. The other headline from the Bok lineup, which we'll show on the screen fully over here in a minute, is Afelele Fassi starting at fullback, which is hands down the Sharks fullback's biggest test so far in a Bok jersey. So it'll be really interesting to see how he goes with Kurtley Aronsa and Cheslin Colby in the back 3, which is just an all-out attacking back 3, and very, very exciting for Bok fans as they look to counter the All Blacks up-tempo dynamic back 3. So we're really looking forward to that match. Again, live and exclusive on FloRugby, so check it out if you're in the North American region, US, Canada, or any US territory. That'll be live and exclusive on FloRugby. Then just shifting over to other bits of rugby news that were breaking that might have gone underneath the radar. Sia Kolisi's return to South African rugby's sort of hit a snag, with Racing 92 owner Jackie Lorenzetti not budging on the transfer fee. It wasn't so much the fee, which is rumoured to be in at 17 million rand, as per Neil Fissler at Rugby Pass, who breaks every bit of news. So if Neil's breaking it, it's most likely going to be accurate. The sticking point seems to be that the Sharks want to pay it out in 3 installments rather than 1, with Lorenzetti insisting that it's paid in 1 hit. So it'll be really interesting to see how it comes about. You kind of feel like it'll happen with, the player really wants to get home, the Sharks want him home. But while within their rights, Racing are sticking fast. Kolisi's a phenomenal player, but didn't really deliver for Racing. It's probably fair to say from a neutral standpoint, following the World Cup, Lorenzetti was just not impressed with him. Kolisi, according to the Racing owner, was not fit and not in form, and then was injured. I think in the end he only played 18 matches for Racing, which is not a great return for a big money signing, and a little bit disappointing given that Owen Farrell, the former England captain, signed for Racing. That would have been a heck of a leadership group between Kolisi and Farrell. So that's a real hit for Racing, and you can understand why they're staying fast. So again, the rumoured fee, reported fee, should we say, is 17 million rand for the transfer, with Racing wanting it up front and the Sharks wanting to spread it between 3 payments. Elsewhere, Scottish Rugby secured a major coup by taking on David Nucifora, who is recently departed from Irish Rugby following a massively successful 10-year spell as the high-performance director of Irish Rugby, during which time Irish Rugby have, again, as we touched on before, been one of the best nations in the world, with 4 Six Nations titles and 2 Grand Slams in that, getting up to the world number 1, defeating the All Blacks away from home. In fact, under Nucifor's guide with former coach Joe Schmidt. It was the first time Ireland ever beat New Zealand, and now they have a phenomenal record over the last 10 with the All Blacks and are real players for the next World Cup. And yes, we are aware of the banter going back and forth with Ireland's quarterfinal curse, and nobody's been hit harder than myself, having been at the last one. But they really are building towards something special, and hopefully they will be able to get a little bit of intel as to how the Boks do it from the likes of Jacques Nienaber, who's with Leinster now, and perhaps Felix Jones. So it'll be really interesting to see how they go. Until that point, they're always going to be second fiddle to South Africa and New Zealand in particular, but they're playing very well, very consistent, arguably the most consistent team of the last 3 years. So a real big boost for Scottish rugby there, and it'll be great to see Scotland, delivering on their undoubted talent. I mean, that you've got Finn Russell there, who's arguably the best, or certainly in the top 3 fly halves in the world at the moment. Blair Kinghorn's a phenomenal player, playing really well for Toulouse, and looks set to be the long-term fullback, and just lots of other talent elsewhere. Rory Darge in the forward pack. So there is a real chance there, and if anyone's going to turn them around, it's the reportedly confrontational Nucifora. So good luck to Scotland on that. That'll be fantastic to see Scotland become real challengers and not just challengers in the media. Sorry, as an Irish fan, I had to get the little shot in. Finally, the last little bit of news that we have is that Louis Rees-Zammit will learn his NFL fate today, whether he makes it to the Kansas City Chiefs 53-man roster. Reports are that it's unlikely, given he didn't really light the world up in preseason. In fact, you could probably argue it was the most disappointing of the high-profile rugby transfers, including Jared Hayne on that, and Christian Wade, who both had big-time moments in the preseason, whereas Rees-Zammit just did not flash at all. Now, that doesn't mean he can't get there, but it's likely that he will end up on their practice squad. For rugby fans, that means he won't be active on game day, but he'll stay within the facility, learning the sport, learning from the coaches, doing all of that sort of stuff. And it also means that he can be poached by another NFL team should they wish to take him on and should he wish to go. So not the end of the road for Louis Rees-Zammit, but certainly not what he would have hoped when he made the transition. So watch this space, whether he stays in the NFL or whether he comes back to rugby. There's almost no doubt that he'd have plenty of suitors if he did decide to come back across a multitude of leagues, whether it's the Premiership, URC, or Top 14. It'll be interesting to see if he does make that transition back. But by all accounts, he wants to stay and learn as much from the NFL as he can and fight for his place. So let's see how we go on that. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe, leave comments, let us know how we can get better, or if you have anything you'd like us to cover, let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching this. You can follow all of our action on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We got you covered on all of that, and check out our website, which always has articles, video highlights, everything you need on that side of things. And again, if you're based in North America or US territory and you want to follow along with the main rugby competitions of the Top 14, the URC, Super Rugby, Rugby Championship, and a variety of other international rugby events, FloRugby is your place to watch the streams. Thank you for checking out this video, and again, we hope you enjoyed it. Like and subscribe.